This is the first in a series of videos in which I will be sharing my ongoing progress with having hyperbaric oxygen therapy for my ME-CFS. And in this video I will be telling you about my first 2 sessions, as well as what are the various hopes that I have for doing this treatment. But first, my name is Patrick Usher. I am the author of Understanding ME-CFS and Strategies for Healing, a book which distills the latest breakthrough research into ME-CFS and Long Covid, and which shares the various treatment strategies that I have tried in order to improve my condition. The links for that book are down below. So I've been interested in hyperbaric oxygen for quite some time. I listened last autumn to some podcasts about its potential usefulness for Long Covid. That was the podcast on the Long Covid podcast with Jackie Baxter, and the person being interviewed worked at the Aviv clinics in Florida, which is one of the main centres for hyperbaric oxygen treatment. And he was talking about a study that found long-term sustained benefits in Long Covid patients after 40 sessions of hyperbaric oxygen. This was very interesting to me, and I think that although I'll do videos that are more focused on the science of hyperbaric oxygen and how they might theoretically help with ME-CFS and Long Covid in particular, and this video is a more relaxed discussion of my experience so far, it does make sense at a very basic level that this could help, because in ME-CFS and Long Covid there's a reduced blood perfusion throughout the body and a reduced, therefore, tissue oxygenation. And with hyperbaric oxygen, you are really pushing the oxygen into parts of the body that have not been receiving it. So it could feasibly help with regenerating and building back up parts of the body that have been struggling through a lack of oxygenation. But as I say, I'll talk more about the science of it some other time. But basically I was interested in doing it, but when I was looking into the costs of everything, it was prohibitive. The clinics in the US, these Aviv clinics, seem to be very expensive indeed, according to what I read on various patient forums. And in the UK or Europe, they're quite expensive, with treatments typically around 250 to 300 euro per session. So what I've done instead is I have come to Romania, and I've actually always wanted to visit Romania, so this is a dream come true. I'm delighted to be here at last. But the treatment costs are about a third of what they are elsewhere in Europe, and yet it's the same standard. So I'm here. I'm in the city of Oradea in northwest Romania, and I am attending a clinic called Hyperbarium, and I've had my first 2 sessions. So I'm going to report in this video about how those sessions have gone, but I'm also going to talk about what I hope will happen. So let's talk first of all about how they've gone so far. Well, I got here about 6 days ago, and I had my first consultation on Saturday, and I was very impressed with the clinic. It's very beautiful, it's very clean, it's very open and spacious, and the clinic has experience treating Long Covid patients and patients with chronic Lyme, and so even though they're not up to speed on all the things to do with ME-CFS, which I wouldn't expect anyway, but they are aware of these kinds of illnesses, and have treated other patients with them with success. What they wanted me to do was to get a scan, an X-ray of my lungs, just to make sure that everything was okay there before treatment. This is actually very interesting. I got the X-ray done yesterday morning, 2 days ago, and it shows that I'm fine for the treatment. But what was really surprising for me was that I actually have quite extensive fibrosis in my lungs. That's scarring of lung tissue, and I'm not really sure why. Obviously, I did have COVID, but I wasn't, I was ill before that. ME-CFS developed some years prior for me, and it wasn't, in my case, it was thanks to extreme stress rather than an infection. So I'm not sure how my lungs have ended up that way. It's not desperately bad, but it's just a sort of diffuse, quite subtle scarring throughout the lungs. And I've been looking that up. Maybe it could be something to do with mold or dust, it seems to be possible. Some autoimmune conditions can contribute to this. So I don't know if that's the case for me. But it's kind of an open question. And what was interesting about it is that even though, there's mechanisms by which ME-CFS can lead to breathlessness, particularly the lack of adequate blood flow return to the heart when you're standing, the doctor explained to me that, shortness of breath is a really, one of the signs of fibrosis in the lungs. Now, they've offered me a consultation with their lung specialist, which I think I will take. But what's really encouraging is the doctor says that if I follow the course of treatment, I do at least 40 sessions, it's highly likely that the fibrosis in my lungs will actually resolve. And so what we plan to do is, after I finish my treatments, I will have another X-ray, and we'll be able to do a before and after comparison and actually see has it actually resolved, and so I can be a case study on their website, which would be great. But anyway, so that's very interesting, and I'm very grateful for that actually, because I would have thought it would be fine. I have had problems with my lungs, but I didn't know that there would be something that would show up. Like, I've been very wheezy. I've had issues with fluid in my lungs, which have improved, thankfully. But this has been a surprise, and it'd be very interesting to see if it can actually improve, which would be amazing, even if that was the only benefit I gained. So, I had the first treatment on Monday. Look, I was very nervous about this. I'm always nervous before a new treatment, but I wasn't as nervous as the time I went to Germany to get my blood washed. I wrote my will before that one. But anyway, this time I just knew I was going to be nervous, and I was going to get on with it and see what happened. So we go into the chamber, and you're feeling like you're in this kind of aircraft. It's sort of a multi-person chamber, so it has capacity for about 16 people. There were about 8 or 9 people there. And the first part of the treatment is the compression phase. So this is when they are pressurizing the chamber, and they're bringing you down to essentially the equivalent of 45 feet under water. This is 2.4 atmospheres. I don't know how, the ATA thing, the atmospheres of pressure, or atmospheres absolute, but that's the measurement for it. And this is different from light, HBOT light, which is like 1.3, 1.5 atmospheres. This is 2.4 atmospheres. This is medical grade HBOT. It's much more powerful in terms of getting the oxygen into the body, and therefore also potentially harder on you in terms of a treatment, and that's something that I was worried about. But anyway, so they do the pressurization, and this is something I was worried about, because you have to equalize the pressure in your ears, and if you can't, you can get barotrauma, and this means that your ears actually become damaged. Now, actually, it was very strong initially. That first treatment session, the sense of pressure in my ears was much stronger than I was expecting, and it starts immediately as soon as they pressurize the chamber. And so I basically had to clear my ears all the time for the first 15 minutes. Every 20 seconds I was clearing my ears. But the good thing was that I was able to do it. And what the assistant told me is that the first time is the hardest, and as you do more sessions, the compression becomes easier. And actually, my experience yesterday in my second treatment was much better. It was actually, I would say, 50% easier. The pressure was 50% lighter than it was on Monday. So that was good, because I didn't want it to be like that again. I know sometimes they say in when people are talking, clinics are describing these treatments, they say it's a bit like being in an airplane. Well, what happened on Monday was not like being in an airplane. No one would go in an airplane if that was what it was like. I mean, it was really quite strong, but it was much better yesterday. So I'm hopeful that today will be better again. But the main thing was that I was able to clear my ears. And actually, in the weeks leading up to the treatment, I was practicing the Valsalva maneuver, which is where you pinch your nose and blow out, and because the air can't go through your nose, it goes out through your ears, and you clear your ears. And I couldn't do it at first, I couldn't access that, but I practiced it, and then I learned how to do that. So I prepared in advance, and I'm glad I did. Anyway, so that was the compression part, and then they put on this mask, and it's a hefty old mask, and it's kind of, it's quite significant. And my immediate reaction was, to be honest, actually, my immediate reaction to the first half an hour of the whole treatment was, what have I done? I don't really want to be here. Let me out. But I calmed down as it went along. And I also found that actually, even though at first this seems like quite an imposition to have this mask on your face, it was possible to relax. And particularly yesterday, I found it more relaxing. I was able to get into a zone. But with the first treatment, it was more just about getting used to what it was all about. It's a new thing. You're struggling. You're like, how do I get the mask on? How do I get it off? Am I going to get my ears perforated? All these questions, etc., etc. But it was all right. They take breaks throughout the treatment, so I think every 22 minutes, I'm not sure exactly, but you take a 3-minute break. This is to encourage something called the hyperoxic-hypoxic paradox, which I'll talk about in other videos, but it's very important for the regeneration capacity of the treatment, and it's also important to avoid oxygen toxicity. After the first treatment, I felt a bit lightheaded, a bit sort of woozy. When I got home, I was really kind of pretty tired, and I had a lot of tingling in my body. After yesterday's treatment, I again was very tired, but not as much, and I didn't have the tingling. I wasn't actually sure I was going to go ahead with yesterday's treatment because the first treatment was quite hard on me, and yesterday morning I felt pretty poorly. But I thought, look, I'm here for this. If I don't do well after the second treatment, I will take a break, today. But actually, I'm glad I went ahead with the second one. I'm feeling okay for today. I certainly feel the effects of it. You feel the oxygen getting into you. It's a kind of strange feeling, but a bit gungy, a bit sort of wet. I don't know quite how to describe it, but you do feel it getting in. And so I'm just going to keep going unless there's a disaster, basically. That's my plan. So, yes. So the first night, I didn't sleep well. I had insomnia during the night. I woke up for a few hours and then I had broken sleep after that. But last night I did sleep very well, and I knew that I was going to. I felt more centred in the evening. I felt calmer, more relaxed. My mind was brighter. So that was encouraging. So basically, up until this point, I would say that I had a lot of fears going in, but I've done all right. I haven't had problems with the pressurization. I am feeling encouraged. I can definitely feel that it's doing something, and I have high hopes that this treatment could really help me. Speaking of which, I do plan to do at least 40 sessions. I would even consider doing up to 60, but I'm not trying to think about that too much right now because that just seems quite mammoth as an endeavour. But for me, this is an opportunity to really heal and to bring my life to another level of health. Because although I've improved a lot, I used to be bedridden. I was bedridden for 2 months straight at one point. I was typically between housebound and bedridden. I also had these life-threatening symptoms 4 years ago, which I talk about in relation to extreme thirst and low blood sodium levels. But I've made a lot of progress. The very fact that I could come to Romania, even though it was hard to do the journey and I was a zombie, the very fact that I could do that would have been inconceivable. I mean, I couldn't walk for 1 minute, right? So the fact that I could come here in and of itself is a huge achievement. Now, it's not like I can just do whatever I want here. I cannot. I am still ill. I still have to live a confined life. And I have unpleasant symptoms quite often. But what I'm really hoping is that this treatment, even if it doesn't facilitate a cure, if it could bring my baseline health to a situation where I'm more obviously mild ME and just able to engage more in life and, be more resilient and not have so many fears about what can happen to me if I do too much. That would be a wonderful thing. And I think there's a lot of reasons why it could help with that. Of course, I wouldn't say no if it could improve my baseline health so much that I actually recover. That would be wonderful. but I'm looking for sustained improvement, and that's why I'm committing to so many treatments, because if you do at least 40, you get the benefits long term. I do wonder if it could help me to recover. There are some anecdotal stories of people who recover using this treatment from ME and from Long Covid, and what I think it might be the reason for that is that the hyperbaric oxygen improves your anaerobic threshold. So at least 10% is what I've read, but some people improve 15, 20, even 30%. And so if you improve the anaerobic threshold that much, it means that you're much less likely to crash. And if you're much less likely to crash, then your body can put its resources into healing, because it's not constantly being taken down with this disaster that is post-exertional malaise, which it then has to recover from. So, I have high hopes. I'm encouraged by the first two. It's going to be a slog, but at this stage, I'm prepared to do whatever it takes. So that's the situation. That's my first video. I hope to do these quite regularly, if that's of interest to people. I hope it might be. I want it to be a record for people to just see, to have, if they're interested in doing hyperbaric oxygen, and particularly for these kinds of illnesses, that they can see someone's progress as they go along. So I'll be posting these, I hope, every week, at least every 2 weeks, to keep you updated. So that's it for this video. I will see you in the next one.